Hi, folks. Welcome to Module 4. Can't believe that we're moving right through the semester. It's moving along at a really quick pace, and I know it's a lot for you guys, and it's great weather outside, and you'd probably rather be at the beach, but you're working towards your goal, and you're hitting your strategy, which is to get your master's in health administration, so you're right on track. The semester continues to fly by, and so I can't believe it. Like I said, it's already Module 4. And what we're going to talk about today is something called directional strategies. And really the focus of this chapter, this module, which is chapters uh, 5 and 6, yeah, that's right, chapters 5 and 6, is really to begin to develop the directional strategies and then to identify what are those situational or those strategic alternatives or actually initiatives that you want to attach to the directional strategies. And we'll look at something which are called critical success factors, which are sort of the metrics around an organization that help them to identify whether or not they're hitting their goals or not. And then we'll also look at goal setting. I want to talk a little bit also about the role of the board and the role of leadership in strategy direction, because I think that's absolutely critical, and is focused on in the chapter, and I want to make sure that you folks are thinking about that. And then, as we look at doing this groundwork that we've done in the situational analysis, where we looked at the external environment, the internal environment, the competitive environment within a marketplace, and and have covered that sort of strategic direction, we'll then move to strategic formulation, which is the next phase in the vertical, where you're actually going to look at what are the strategic formulation strategies that you're going to identify as you're going through the strategic planning process. There are a number of objectives that I want to make sure you focus on. Again, there's a total of 15 of them in the module, which is a lot, but I want you to draw your attention to 5 of those, and I've listed those in the module in Moodle, and that's objective number 3, 4, 5, 11, and 12. And the first 3 focus really on understanding how to build a mission statement, how to build a vision statement, how to build a values statement for an organization. And then we want to get into some more specifics around the directional strategies, the adaptive strategies, the market entry exit strategies, and competitive strategies, which all fall under that bucket of strategy formation. And we want to remind everyone that when you're developing strategy, that there's the external environment, there's the internal environment, and then there's the role of the leaders that you all play in terms of setting directional strategies that then determine the strategy for the organization. Back in chapter 1, I want to keep going back to that initial document that talked about strategic planning in the process, and there were 3 components to it. There was the strategic planning process, which had the situational analysis, which was the external environment and the internal analysis of the organization. And the third part of that was directional strategies. The second component, the strategy formulation component, is a part of today's module. And then, of course, the third component of that model is the implementation, which we'll talk about next week. And so when you think about directional strategies, you may think about the directional strategy being an activity or some direction you're going to go or how you're going to move something. But really, the way that Ginter talks about directional strategies, he talks about them in terms of documents. And so he talks about them in terms of the mission, the vision, and the values. And so those are labeled as directional strategies. And really they are, because those are the documents that really set the direction of an organization. When you think about a mission statement, or some organizations that you're familiar with, the purpose statement, HCSC has a purpose statement, really articulate what the organization does. The vision statement really is more aspirational. It talks about the future and what the organization hopes to be. And then the values really guide the behavior within the organization. And so they're the behavioral norms, they're the things that the organization thinks are important, and that they're those ideal states of behavior that an organization desires. And a lot of times people will look at that value statement and say, this is what I should be doing. And some organizations place terms like ethics and telling the truth and doing the right thing as to values that are absolutely key to those organizations. And so most of you, I'm sure, are probably pretty familiar with mission, vision, and value statements, but we want to make sure that we understand that those are the foundation of all strategic direction, and setting those documents in place and having them available as reference documents that guide behavior, guide decision making is really critical to the strategic process. And as you develop your directional strategies or your documents, like with all of the different segments that we've looked at in our strategic planning study, there are steps for the process. And the first step in developing your strategic strategy documents is really to, again, conduct a situational analysis, which we've already learned about, looking at the external environment, looking at your internal environment, looking at the competitive landscape that you're operating in, and seeing what is happening out there. And then you can begin to develop your mission. You can begin to develop your vision statement. You then can also begin to develop your value statements. And then lastly, another term which I want to make sure you're familiar with is the development of the critical success factors. Because again, those critical success factors are key as you build out your strategy, and then you have metrics in place that guide the organization from a strategic momentum perspective to hit those targets. And so in terms of the mission, really the mission can be summarized in what do we want to do? You know, sort of what's the goal is defined as those things that the organization should be doing that we may not be doing, some things that we should maybe stop doing, or things that should be done differently. And if you're familiar with the purpose statement of HCSC, which is where I worked prior to my coming to the University of Texas, our mission or purpose statement was the way that we labeled it, was to do everything in our power to stand with our members in sickness and in health. And oftentimes it's easy to say, that's a lot of fluff, or it doesn't really have any meaning. But I know for me, I had a situation where we had a employee of a grocery store chain in Texas that had traveled outside the U.S. and had a ski accident in Switzerland and or in Germany, somewhere in Europe. And unfortunately, they were unable to get services because they could not validate coverage. And so, you know, it was a huge issue. I actually got engaged. And I remember thinking about that purpose statement, which said we're going to do everything in our power to stand with our members. And I actually was willing to pull out my corporate Amex card and to make sure that that member got care if I needed to give the credit card to guarantee payment. I mean, I knew that payment would come through Blue Card, through the Blue Cross system, but I just felt it was critical that we do everything we can to stand with our members in sickness and in health. And so that mission statement, that purpose statement at HCSC was a real live document that that was used and drawn on and really helped the organization to know that our focus was really around our members, and not just in sickness, but also in health, because we also wanted to make sure we helped to maintain the health of our members. And so the statements from a mission perspective should be clear and concise. You want to look at what your organization's doing today. They want to be specific, but you also want them to last for a long time, because to continually do mission statements and redo them, modify them, edit them is a huge effort. And so you want to make sure that your purpose or your mission statement really is enduring, and it really talks about and describes who you are as an organization. And so keep that focus when you're looking at a mission statement. And so the statement components of it, some of it could be the customers that you want to interact with, some of the services that you provide, what's the geography of the organization can be included, maybe some commitments to specific values or philosophy or other important components that you'd want to include in a mission statement. The next strategic directional document is the vision statement. And the vision is more about where do we want to be and where do we want to go, and what will we look like when we fulfill the mission that we are called to do. And then a vision statement should be inspiring. It should challenge people. It should focus on employees and at first, and customers second, which people may wonder about that. But really, if you take care of your employees will take care of your customers. And it should really have memorable and guidance in terms of where the organization is going to go into the future, because it's a vision statement. It's looking out into the future. And the third point is around the value statement and the behaviors, the ideal organizational behaviors that you want to see demonstrated within the organizations when employees interact with each other and when they interact with the external environment. And so the values really should reflect the culture of an organization. They should reflect the image that the organization wants to portray. They should be acceptable to all the stakeholders, both internal and external. They should be, of course, consistent with the vision and with the mission statements. Of course, they should be ethical, and they should really resonate with a commitment that's clear. Some of the value statements, they should focus on behaviors, organizational norms. They should be shared beliefs by everyone, shared assumptions, and again, they should be fundamental principles of an organization. The next item I want to highlight are the critical success factors. And critical success factors are really important in any organization, whether it's a department, whether it is a division, or whether it's an organization. And critical success factors, there should be a few key metrics that people are looking at that really can measure what it is that's going to indicate that the organization is hitting those things that are essential to the success of a department, a division, or an organization. And they should be focusing on what it is that we want to achieve. They should be measurable and that they should be achievable. And so really, they're the goal outcome or the metric that are attached to the goals that you're setting. And oftentimes organizations will not do a good job of monitoring critical success factors. And I can't think of a single more important activity than to make sure that everyone knows what are the targets that we're trying to hit, what are those critical success factors, those key metrics, and where are we at any point in time in achieving the metrics that we have identified as being critical to the success of the organization. And of course, the critical success factors are based on goals. And so I want to talk a little bit about goal setting. Not only what should a goal say, but how to say it. And then we'll talk a little bit about organizational momentum, that strategic momentum that we had talked about, and how goals and having critical success factors really power you to move forward and move the organization in a direction to achieve the vision that's been set. And so you can see how all of these things really do play a role together in integrating whether you have your mission statement, your vision statement, your value statement, your critical success factors, and now your goals. And I think it's important that, and all of you know about the importance of setting goals, that you focus on those things that are achievable. You want to make sure that they are focused on timing, that they're measurable, and that people can all understand that they're communicated in ways that really make sense to all the stakeholders, and that they can be shared, they can be communicated across the organization. Oftentimes, folks will write goals that are too complex, they can't be digested, they can't be consumed, and so it's almost impossible to put together an implementation plan and then to even monitor and measure the outcome of those strategic goals that are set. One of the critical points that I want to stress during this discussion around directional, strategic direction and documents around where the organization is going is really the role of the leaders and the role of the board. And a lot of times folks are in organizations are not exposed to the board. They know that it's a structure out there. They know that maybe they meet once in a while. They think they're maybe a bunch of rich folks who come in and go out, blow in and blow out. But really the role of the board is absolutely critical in an organization. And they play a key role. They should be involved in the development of the strategy of the healthcare organization. You want to have a board that's composed of a broad, diverse base of stakeholders, folks with different backgrounds, folks who are diverse and see the world differently, but yet who all have proven track records of success and know how to move organizations forward. The board should be regularly informed on progress of how things are moving forward. From a strategy perspective, are critical success factors being met? Are they on track? Are they off track? And what their plans are to get them back on track. And so the role of the board and really the role of leaders is critical in the areas of strategic direction. And so boards play a key role in terms of the organization and how to make an organization successful. And again, leadership always sets the tone in terms of hitting strategic milestones and goals. In terms of the second component of the module was on actually what was listed as identifying strategic alternatives. And this is really the second component of our model under the strategy formation bucket. And really there are four different strategic strategies that an organization adopts when setting into motion the strategy that they're identified, the outcomes that the organization wants to achieve. And those are directional strategies, adaptive strategies, market entry and exit strategies, and then competitive strategies. And really, when you think about strategy formation can really be described as really there's three things, and these are 3 points that, regardless of your role in an organization, are important. And that is, what are we going to start doing? What are we going to stop doing? And what are we going to do differently? And so those three things are critical to be thinking about as you are looking at strategy formation. And really, in the formulation of any strategy, now that we've done our initial internal and external assessments, the market assessments, we have our strategic direction set with the strategy documents around mission, vision, value statements. We have critical success factors. We've identified goals. And now we need to look at some of the strategies that we're going to implement to really set the momentum for the organization. And so the adaptive strategies, which are outlined by Ginter, are driven off of the directional strategy documents. And really that is, are we going to expand? Are we going to contract? Are we going to exit a market? And so those decisions are generally made at the corporate or the divisional higher level. And then when you look at market entry and exit strategies, you have to determine, are you going to, if you are going to expand or contract or do something differently, are you going to purchase another organization to do that for you? Are you going to collaborate? Are you going to develop something yourself, or are you going to actually exit the market? And so those four strategies are critical, or activities that are under the market and entry and exit strategy. And then there is, of course, the competitive strategies. So once you identify what it is we're going to do, what are we going to start doing, what are we going to stop doing, what are we going to do differently, and then once we identify those three components, what is it that is going to be our approach to how we do those things? Are we going to purchase, partner? Are we going to develop and build something ourselves? Or are we just going to not do something? Is really, how do we want to be viewed in the marketplace from a competitive strategic perspective? And that's what we call strategic posturing or positioning within a market. And there's four buckets there, and those are outlined nicely in the text also. It's really around, are you going to defend your market? Are you going to look for new markets to expand into? Are you going to analyze your market holistically and identify maybe some areas where you want to continue to do business in, some that you want to do it in differently? Maybe you want to leave a market, exit a market, enter another market. Or you may want to be a reactor who's going to be what I call a fast follower, who's going to look at what other competitors are doing within the marketplace, and then they're going to make decisions based on the competition, being a fast follower. Remember that these do flow logically. And as we've talked about, you need to first set your mission and your vision and your value, your directional strategies, and then you can decide whether you're going to start, stop, or do something differently to help you to achieve that. And then you have the different market exiting and entry strategies around buy, build, develop, or again, exit. And then you want to think about your strategic posture. So that's an overview of the materials that are really highlighted in the lecture. There's some materials that I hope you'll spend time looking at. There's a YouTube video I think is excellent. There's an article that's really helpful on evaluating mission and vision statement work. I think you'll find that to be informative. And then there's a written question and a discussion board entry that I want you to participate in, encourage you to do that. And we will catch up soon.